St. Mark's, may the peace of Christ be with you all. I'd like to ask all of you to take a look at the 6 words above me and tell me if you notice what they all have in common. The words are mom, solos, radar, noon, peep, and race car. If you need a little help, let me show you the next picture with the 2 arrows going in opposite directions. How about now? Can anyone guess what these words have in common? Yeah, just say it. Yeah. Yes, okay, I think I heard someone say it. All the words are exactly the same, whether you read it left to right or right to left. For example, the first word, mom, is exactly the same whether you read it forwards or backwards. The word solos is exactly the same whether you read it forwards or backwards. That's also true for the word radar, noon, peep, and race car. No matter which direction you read it, the words are exactly the same. There's a technical word for this wonderful phenomenon. You heard it from this side of the church. It's the word palindrome, which in this slide kind of says, it means a word that reads the same backwards or forwards. And in the English language, there are hundreds of them. But palindromes can also, there's just not just single words, they can also be phrases and sentences. For example, in this next picture, a Toyota is a palindrome. So is this next picture. Nurses run. If you read it backwards, it's also the same sentence. One of the most famous palindromes in the English sentence is this next one, Madam, I'm Adam. I'll give you a moment to see how that works. Yeah. There are even longer sentences that people have come up with that are palindromes. For example, this next one, a man, a plan, a canal, Panama. Trust me, it reads the same whether forwards or backwards. Here's another one. Was it a cat I saw? And here's a very long palindrome that has 63 names in it. And the next one. Dennis, Nell, Edna, Leon, Nedra, Anita, Rolf, Nora, Alice, Carol, Leo. And I'll stop right there because it'll take me a while to read it. But take my word for it, it reads the same forwards or backwards. There are also palindromes in other languages. Here's one in French. I'm not going to attempt to say it, but it means, in English, kick off the game so that I win it. Here's one in Italian. Again, I cannot speak Italian, but this one means the mice has no grandsons. Here's one in Spanish. Some of you might be able to say it, but translated it means the abbot fed the fox rice. So it's not just in English that we have palindromes, but palindromes exist in many other languages too. A little fun this morning. This morning we are looking at the 5th beatitude from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Here's what it looks like. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. This beatitude is not a palindrome, not in the literal sense, meaning it doesn't read exactly the same if I read it starting from the end back to the beginning. But what I like about this beatitude is that when it comes to mercy, it's not so important whether you're on the giving end first or the receiving end first, but to experience mercy from either end is to experience the blessing of God. Please join me on screen for the reading of the Beatitudes, which is from Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through 12. And for the past few weeks, we've been reading it as a responsive reading together. Matthew 5, verses 1 through 12, the Beatitudes. Now, when he saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. For they will be comforted. For they will inherit the earth. For they will be filled. For they will be shown mercy. For they will see God. For they will be called sons and daughters of God. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. This is the word of the Lord. In the first 4 Beatitudes that we have looked at so far, the focus of each of those Beatitudes was on some kind of an inner quality or attitude. A poverty of spirit, a posture of meekness, the ability to mourn, and a desire for righteousness. But in the 5th Beatitude, the one we're looking at this morning, it's not just about an inner quality in how we think about ourselves as we stand before God. The 5th Beatitude has to do with how we relate with others. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Will you say that with me? Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. This beatitude expands the focus where it's not just about me and God, but now it's also about me and others. This is actually a common theme for the people of God. For example, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, he was carrying the 2 stone tablets containing the 10 Commandments, picture for reference above me. The first tablet listed the first 4 commandments. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make any idols. You shall not take the Lord's name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. What the first 4 commandments on the first stone tablet all had in common was that they all had to do with how we are to treat God. But on the second tablet, which contained 6 more commandments, what they all had to do in common was how we treat one another. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. The 10 Commandments stressed, taken collectively, how important it was to be in a relationship with God, but just as important, how to be in relationships with one another. Jesus echoed this very truth when he was once asked the question, "What is the greatest commandment?" He said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like this, love your neighbor as yourself." In other words, love God and love others. Do you remember Jesus once said, "Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar, first to go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift." Jesus also said later in the Sermon on the Mount when he taught them how to pray, he said, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." So, who we worship, how we worship, and what we believe about our faith directly impacts how we live in the world and treat others. This has always been a central theme for the people of God all throughout the ages. Our faith isn't something we do on our own or something we practice in isolation, but rather our faith is meant to be lived out in community. This is at the heart of our beatitude this morning. Blessed are the merciful, for they will show mercy. Now, this is how the Oxford Dictionary defines the word mercy on screen. Compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish or harm. That's the English modern definition of the word. In the Greek vocabulary, the word for mercy was the word eleos, which is derived, get this, from the word for olive oil, which was used to treat wounds and was soothing, comforting, and healing. In the Hebrew language, there's actually several words that can be translated as mercy, but the most common word is the word hesed, which means loving kindness and steadfast love. So in Christian theology, when we use the word mercy, we understand it to mean the compassionate extension of kindness and forgiveness, particularly to those who are suffering or have wronged us. I hope some of those definitions help you understand a little bit more about this word mercy. So, how does mercy work? What does it look like? There's a famous story, actually it's one of Aesop's fables. It's called The Lion and the Mouse. Listen to a version of the story in contemporary language. Once upon a time, a mighty lion was napping under the warm sun. He stretched out beneath the shade of a tall tree, enjoying the peaceful afternoon. Nearby, a little mouse was scurrying through the grass looking for food. She wasn't watching where she was going and accidentally ran across the lion's nose. The lion twitched in his sleep and then suddenly woke with a loud snort. Annoyed, the lion swiped his paw and caught the tiny mouse. He held her firmly under his huge paw and opened his mouth wide. The little mouse trembled with fear. "Please don't eat me," she squealed. "If you let me go, I promise to help you one day." The lion looked at the tiny creature and laughed. "You? Help me? What could someone as small as you do for a great lion like me?" But he was in a good mood, and so he lifted his paw and let the mouse go. The mouse rushed into the tall grass, calling out, "Thank you, mighty lion. I won't forget this." A few days later, the lion was walking through the forest when he stepped into a trap set by hunters. A heavy net fell over him, tangling his legs and body. No matter how hard he roared or struggled, he couldn't break free. Hearing the lion's roar, the little mouse remembered her promise and ran toward the sound. She spotted the lion trapped under the thick ropes and quickly climbed onto the net. "Don't worry, I'll help you," she said. She used her sharp teeth to gnaw at the ropes, biting and chewing as fast as she could. She worked and worked until finally the ropes snapped. The lion gave a mighty shake and stepped out of the broken net. He looked down at the little mouse in surprise and gratitude. "Thank you, my little friend," the lion said. "You have saved my life." The mouse smiled and said, "Even a tiny mouse can help a mighty lion." And from that day on, the lion and the mouse became good friends and lived happily in the forest. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. The lion and the mouse is a good example of what that looks like. When we show kindness to others, we in turn will be shown kindness. When we help others in a tough situation, others will help us in turn. Sometimes it's a mouse that we decide not to eat for lunch who ends up saving our lives. Sometimes it's someone unexpected, someone out of the blue. Our beatitude doesn't say that mercy is something that is always repaid by the same person, only that when we are merciful to others, mercy will be shown to us. Now, the beautiful thing about the lion and the mouse is that it doesn't matter from which perspective you see that story from. If you're the lion, then you were the one who showed mercy first, and then receive mercy at the end of the story. But if you were the mouse, then you were the one who received mercy first, only to return the favor. Either way, the story works, whether you're the lion or the mouse. And that's the beautiful thing about mercy, whether you're giving it or receiving it. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Now, when Jesus wanted to illustrate how mercy is supposed to work, instead of using cute forest animals, he decided to use people as examples. In Matthew chapter 18, there's a parable Jesus told called the unmerciful servant, where the word mercy is right there in the parable's title. But this parable had a plot twist that no one saw coming. Jesus told the parable like this. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wants to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. The servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. Well, if you know the story of the lion and the mouse, which actually predated this parable by about 400 years, then you already knew how this parable was supposed to end, right? The man who was forgiven of his debt, the man who received mercy, was supposed to go and do the same, supposed to show mercy to others. But then here comes the plot twist. Jesus continued the story. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. The comparison is almost uncomparable. He grabbed him and began to choke him. Pay back what you owe me, he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, please be patient with me and I will pay you back. But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what happened, they were greatly distressed and went and told their master everything that happened. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said. I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? In anger, his master turned him over to the jailer to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. Jesus finished that parable in a way that nobody saw coming. Everyone was expecting that the first servant would go out and naturally, just by consequence, forgive the second servant, just as he himself was forgiven first by the king. That's how mercy is supposed to work, especially if we receive mercy first. But Jesus told that parable with a surprise twist ending on purpose so that people would hear that story and see themselves in that story and recognize how we have failed to grasp the depths of God's mercy. Did you know that in Luke's version of the Sermon on the Mount, which was referred to as the Sermon on the Plain, instead of saying, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy," Luke had the quote this way, "Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful." That quote comes at the end of a paragraph and not in the list of Beatitudes as was in the case of Matthew's Gospel. And in Luke's Gospel, being merciful had to do with loving our enemies and forgiveness. Listen to how Luke tells this part. "But I tell you who hear me, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your cloak, do not stop them from taking your tunic. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be sons and daughters of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. We have all experienced mercy, I'm convinced. We have all received mercy. Whether you are a lion or a mouse, whether you are a saint or a sinner, we have all at one time received mercy. We have been forgiven for debts we cannot repay. We have received grace when grace was undeserved. In that sense, we have already been blessed. So, as you go into this week, may your blessedness bless others. And all God's people said,